Hello, butterflies. Welcome to another episode of Cadence in the Clouds. I am your host, Karen St. Hilaire, your resident life architect, purpose alchemist, and fellow quarantine chick. Have you ever been to the orchestra, the symphony? Have you ever gotten there super early and then you hear everyone practicing their instruments, making sure that everything is in tune? Have you ever paid attention to the fact that it's just noisy when they're doing that? Let's talk about how that fits in purpose. Hey folks, today's episode, I wanted to talk to you about purpose. And there's a selfish reason why I'm doing this. It's all about reintroducing myself to you, the listener, or the new listener, or the ones that I have known forever. If you've listened to the podcast season 1 and now season 2, you know that I have individuals on who speak about purpose, the work that they do now, their professional lives, and how that fits into their life's purpose and this soul's journey in this realm. And so I wanted to share why I choose this topic and why my podcast is about that, and even why the name of the podcast is Cadence in the Clouds. Because I think that when you understand what that's about, then you fully understand why, the guests come on and they speak that way. Because I do want to start bringing the guests back, but so much you're going to want to hear me say, right? Cadence in the Clouds. What is Cadence in the Clouds? So there is, to know me is to know that everything purposeful, meditation, being one with self and being one with the universe. Therefore, being one with God, right? And so I always believe and I always say that when you hear a song that transports you to another space, that removes you from your current day-to-day right here on earth in this seat space, and it just takes you somewhere else, whether it's reminiscent of love, whether it's reminiscent of safety, but it just takes you to a space of comfort, love, and joy, that to me is heavenly. And so for me, when I look up into the sky, that's where we say heaven is. Sometimes even we say heaven is right here on earth. We look at the clouds. To me, when you get to the clouds, what's more heavenly than being in a fluffy cloud? What if you can sit in the clouds and lay in the clouds? But I also believe that if we ever get to lay in the clouds, there's so much that we will learn. We'll get to look down on the earth. We'll get to see the full picture and not just the perspective of where our eyesight leads, not the peripheral, not down a block, not around the corner, but everything, a global view. So Cadence is the Cloud is a global view of how people look at purpose, how people function in purpose. And you hear it in the podcast, but it's more so someone just allowing you to delve into their heavenly space, into their space of comfort, their space of want and inspiration, therefore inspiring you to be that great person that you are intended to be. Because I always think that when someone is attracted to something, i.e. you being attracted to this podcast, to this episode, and you're listening to it, there's an attraction. There's a law of attraction that brought you here. There's a purpose being served, and there is something. A seed will be planted, or a planted seed will be watered, or a watered seed will blossom into whatever flower it's supposed to bring forth. And so that's why my podcast is called Cadence in the Clouds, getting the global perspective of purpose from different individuals, and therefore allowing you to grow, to allowing you to manifest what you have, because it will inspire you in some way, shape, or form to do something. It may inspire you to stop doing something, but there's inspiration either way. So that's why it's called Cadence in the Clouds. Okay, purpose. What is purpose? It's the reason for which something is done or created. It's the reason why something exists. It's like the purpose of us being on this earth is to complete a job that will put the universe right on the axis. The purpose of our walk in this life. So it's the motivation. It's the grounds for doing something. It's the reason why you do something. It's the point. Purpose is the reason why. Everyone asks, what's your greater why? Your greater why is your purpose. So let's talk about my greater why. My greater why, how did I know about my greater why? I cannot honestly tell you when I figured out what my greater why was. I cannot tell you when everything came to me, but I will say that I will backtrack a little bit. I'm in graduate school. I'm having conversation with my friends, and we all have these issues, and we all are talking about what we want to do in life, because now we're in grad school, we want to work with nonprofit, but all of us had this passion and desire to leave our mark, in this universe in such a powerful way. And so we're still friends to this day, really good friends actually, but we were drawn to each other. And so I decided to have these tea parties. In the process of all that, I was watching an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show years ago, I think maybe in 2001, 2002, and Dr. Phil was talking about tapes that we have, and the tapes are your preconceived notions when you're doing something, right? So you're going with your own thought, you're going with your own energy, and you subconsciously sabotage what's happening around you. That's the gist of it. And so that became part of the conversations that we were having. Like, are we sabotaging our work, our destiny work, our God ordained work? Are we sabotaging it? This is the conversations we would have, because we just couldn't understand why certain things were happening in our lives, right? And so fast forward, every Sunday I would watch G.E. Patterson and Bishop Eddie Long from New Birth Baptist Church in Atlanta. And they would always talk about purpose and God and why you're here, etc., etc. Now, let me stop for 1 second. My podcast is named Cadence in the Clouds, and I actually got that from G.E. Patterson, because I remember one day he was preaching, and then, he was talking about, sometimes you pray so hard that you become elevated, and you get to the point where you're looking down, but you're still praying, but you're not looking down or looking down at the people. You're looking down, and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's an elevation. I'm in the clouds. And when you're in the clouds, that's deep prayer, that's deep meditation, that's you and God, right? And so I always felt that if I did a podcast, I wasn't thinking podcast, but like a show or something, it would be Karen in the Clouds. Listen, Karen in the Clouds, because I want to be in an elevated space where it's not just me, Karen, doing the work, but it's actually that purposeful work that was poured into me, that I am so in tune with the poor that it takes me to the clouds. And so when I do share what was deposited into me, clouds, heavenly rain, it will rain down on everyone and they'll get it. Those who are supposed to be drenched by it will be drenched by it. And if you get wet from what I have to share, or if you get saturated or feel the moisture of what I have to share, the seeds that were planted in you begin to grow. So you're either going to blossom as a flower, you're going to produce fruit, but at the end of the day, your intentions will be made known and your purpose will be realized, right? So that's where we get the clouds from. So I've always, even to this day, when I'm in meditation and I feel the elevation and I feel the shift, I'm like, wow, I'm headed into the clouds and this is real. So that's what I got from G.E. Patterson. Now from Eddie Long from New Birth Baptist Church, he was having a conference, a Spirit and Truth conference. I forget what years. I am thinking it's like 2003, 2004. And so I go to Atlanta to this conference. And there are two distinctive memories from the conference, because one is where I received my assignment, my purposeful assignment. But the other one, the first part of it was Jamal Harrison Bryant. He was preaching and he was talking about the animals in the jungles and cars. I remember those two things. But his animal in the jungle illustration was basically about every animal from your largest hippo to your most tiny ant has a name and they have a purpose and they have a role to play in this jungle life. So if the ant has to be food for the giraffe or whatever, everyone has a job. And what happens is we tend to look left and look right and try to do other people's job and forget that we have a job to do. The word wasn't purpose, the word wasn't intention. It was like basically everyone has a job. Okay? Maybe he did use intention and purpose, and I don't remember that. I actually found the tape, the other day, and I have to find a way to like get it on an MP3. And so then after he spoke later on that evening or the following day, I don't remember when, Eddie Long closed out the conference. And he had the band play music all out of tune, all discombobulated, right? And he says, if you go to the orchestra and you go early, you hear this noise, and it's just like, rah, 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 rah. It's a bunch of noise, and no one is playing in tune, and it sounds sloppy. But when the conductor taps and the conductor gets ready to start the show, or the music gets ready to play, then everything comes into sync. Everyone is in their lane. They're playing the proper notes. They're following the sheet music. They're looking at the conductor and his little stick, and they're going with the instructions from this. Now, what does that have to do with purpose? Once you know your role, once you know the seat that you occupy in this universe, and you function within that space, with intention and purpose, what you have been created to do gets done. And you satisfy your existence here. Some people say, what's your purpose in life? You are good for nothing. No, that person is there to either agitate and or create. In either way you look at it, they're here for a purpose. And so when Eddie Long did that, he turned around and he said, once people understand who they are, and the flow will be right, and I can't remember his words because it was so long ago, but everything that he was saying, he's looking my way, and I swear to you, I looked up and I'm like, he's talking to me. And I was open for the pour because he was raining down on me. The moisture was coming onto me. Like I was getting my life's assignment at that time. And I have to say that after he was done, I said, I remember saying it's all about the rhythm. Everyone has to know their rhythm because we all have a rhythm in this orchestra. The symphony will not be right if we don't play our notes properly and we're not on rhythm. You have to tune your instrument. You have to know the music. You have to understand what the conductor is doing. So there's so much to be done. That was my role. And so I named the company Kadence with a K because my name is Karen. So that's how you get cadence in the clouds. And to this day, I must say that when I work with people, I try to make sure that, their instruments are tuned in. There are other factors to what I do as well, but the main thing is being in tune with what your purpose is here. And sometimes it might be going left, and other times it might be going right. But you do the work that you are placed here to do, and life won't necessarily be great, but life will be satisfying. It will be rewarding because you're obedient. Now, I say all this, and I'm not going to say it's all been great because let me tell you, I thought at one point I was going to be like this famous person, like, Oprah was going to call me, and I'm going to write books, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And it wasn't happening, right? And I had speaking engagements. I was getting sporadic clientele, but what my ego wanted, my ego wasn't being satisfied. So I was getting mad. And I clearly remember saying, I ain't doing this no more. I'm done. Like, who wants to do that? And I had a dream. And the dream was basically me moving forward, but I understood I was moving forward with the business. I was moving forward with the work that I was supposed to do. I understood what was happening in the dream to mean that. And I, get up and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And this is like maybe 6 years in, right? I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not doing this no more. Like, this is a waste of my time, waste of my money, because, I have a website, I have this, I have that. Ugh, this is too much. I'm spending too much, and there's no return on my investment. Mind you, now I'm looking at people that I've worked with, and they're doing great. They're like doing great stuff. But me, I'm like, oh, Like, people will call and go, if I hadn't spoken to you, I wouldn't have gone left, or I wouldn't have gone right, or I wouldn't have done this. I spoke to you and I understand. I worked with you and I realized that if I mesh these two together, great, wonderful, get a check here, get some cash here, da, da, da. But for me, it wasn't what I thought, the grandiose aspect of everything wasn't coming to me, right? And so I get a call from my girl Fatima. She was in season 1 episode about prayer, and she had a dream. And I remember I was headed out, and I was in transit, and I got this call, and she was like, I had a dream, and you have to continue your work. I don't know what it means, but you have to continue your work, blah, blah, blah. That was the gist of the call. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, God, you think you slick, right? Like, she had a dream? Okay. And so, like, you went and talked to her to tell me, get it together, right? Okay, great. And then my mama had a dream. And the sequence happened like in like 2 or 3 days. My mother had a dream, and she also said, oh, you have to do this work. You seem like you're getting tired, but you got to continue to do the work, blah, 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 blah. And I remember the last thing was, I wasn't home. Again, I was in transit. I remember that. And I just heard, you can't stop. You cannot stop. And I didn't. I mean, I just kept going. And it's been a ride, There's so many different aspects. I have, gone so many avenues with this. But I'll tell you what, I have never strayed from the fact that my purpose in this life. So with that, there's so much more, but why? I always want people to think about what their greater why is. And the greater why is not necessarily tied into your big job and the big dollars and the big contracts. Sometimes your greater why, and it's not necessarily tied into your children or your significant others or your family. Sometimes your greater why is just tied, and it's only when you have decided to activate it that you're going to see the results that your soul desires, that it's going to make your soul happy. And I think that I shared this. I'm hoping that me sharing my greater why and sharing why I did this podcast. I know I did this like really ass backwards. Like I should have done this at the very beginning, season 1. But this is the time to do it. I think a lot of people are in isolation and they're trying to find their new hustle, or they're trying to redirect their purpose maps, and they're trying to understand who they are now and their greater why. You already know the answer. You just have to do the work, and you don't have to leave the highway that you're on to get on someone else's highway to be great. I can't be great by trying to make my podcast like someone else's podcast. I cannot be great by trying to sound like someone else, or trying to give you content that's very lascivious or whatever, so that you can say, oh, she's dope. I choose to only give the content that fits into the role that I'm here to play in podcast land, which is to remind people that purposeful work is important, and intentional work is, in the grand scheme of things, helps keep the universe in balance. And so I do hope that you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll share it with a friend. And next week I'll be back with some more. That's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like us on your preferred platform, share the news about this episode, and more importantly, have an awesome day.